As a follow-up to our webinar, Live Posting Compliance Audit, Is Your Business at Risk?, we have Ashley Kaplan, Senior Employment Law Attorney, here to answer some of your pressing questions about posting compliance. Ashley, thank you for being here with us. I'll let you get started on the questions from our webinar attendees.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. We did get in a lot of good questions. I tried to pick out a few that I think apply to most of you. So if I didn't get to your question, it's probably because it was about a specific state or city, but we'll follow up with you. First question, can mandatory postings be put in a book or binder format which is clearly marked and hanging on the wall? It's easier to keep updated and less expensive. The answer is it depends. The government agencies have been pretty clear that you cannot use a binder as a substitute for wall postings. If you have a facility with walls, you still have to post the posters on the walls. There are some exceptions, however. We're seeing a lot of our clients that we work with have non-traditional work sites that just don't have any walls at all. Think of like a kiosk in the mall, or a valet station, or like services on wheels, maybe like blood donation trailers, or mammogram on wheels, those kinds of things. So in those cases, they're just, there are no walls for these posters. In that case, you need to consider other options. If all of your employees in those locations have electronic access and intranet access and some kind of mobile or computer device to check electronically, that would be a different alternative you could consider. But also in that case, those binders would be a compliance substitute. So if you don't have walls at all, then yes, those binders, you can put in a binder or book format as long as they are, like you said, clearly marked and they're accessible to employees. You can either, hang it on a hook in that small non-traditional workspace, or put it on a shelf. Make sure it's very visible, and make sure you've put some kind of notice, whether it's in your employee handbook or in your training, just to let employees know where it is. And of course, you want to make sure that even your binder or your book is fully up to date and complete, and that whenever there are mandatory changes, that you're changing those out as well. Okay, another question. We got a lot of questions about E-Verify. What if a government contract requires you to use E-Verify, but the state doesn't allow it? And I was a little confused by the question, seeing the state doesn't allow it. There are no states right now that have a prohibition on E-Verify. There are certain states that require it, and we went over the states in the presentation. There are certain states that require all employers to use E-Verify, but in the other states, it's either a voluntary participation or for Fed contractors. There used to be a state law years ago in Illinois where the Illinois legislature was trying to prohibit employers from using E-Verify, and at that time I can understand this type of question. But for now, there are no states that prohibit it. Even if they did, with the case of a government contract that requires it, you need to be doing E-Verify if you want to participate with that government contract. So yes, if the government contract requires it, you need to do E-Verify in order to participate in that contract. Next, this is regarding the federal contractor postings. Does federal contractor mean that we do business with someone in the government? And the answer to this is generally to be covered by the federal contractor postings, and remember each one has different requirements around it. You either have to be providing goods or services to the government, to the federal government, or receiving federal funding from the government. But like I said, the definition of federal contractor is a little different for each posting law. There are a few, we showed in the presentation there are up to 13 posters. There are a few of those posters that apply almost across the board to all federal contractors. Like I said, if you're providing goods or services or if you're receiving funding. Typically the ones that apply are the EEO as a law supplement, the pay transparency policy, and the E-Verify and right to work posters. Then you have others that where it depends on the amount of your contracts. Like the Walsh-Healy poster has to be posted if you have certain contracts for goods. of at least $10,000 or for services of at least $2,500. So in some cases, it's tied to the amount of your contract in order to be covered by these requirements. Same for the federal contractor minimum wage poster. On that one, it depends on either the amount of your contract or the types of services that you're providing. The NLRA poster depends on the amount of your contract, so all federal contracts over $100,000. And then the rest of them really depend on what agency you're working with or what agency is providing your funding. So the ARA whistleblower rights notice, for example, only applies if you're receiving funding under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. The DHS and DOD posters only apply if you're receiving funding from those agencies. And then finally, there is one, the notice to workers with disabilities, where it's any federal contractor that's employing disabled employees under the special minimum wage rate. It's a special certificate that you can get from the Department of Labor so that you can pay a commensurate wage rate for disabled workers. And if you participate in that, you are considered a federal contractor required to post these. So it really depends on each poster. Okay, next, this also has to do with the federal contractor posters. What about our locations that don't get involved with the contracts at all? Do they still have to post federal contractor posters? And the answer there is, if you have locations that don't do any work at all on these federal contracts, then you are not required to post in those locations. The law says you have to post for federal contractors at any location where any work is being performed relating to the contract. But do keep in mind that this is interpreted broadly, and it includes any contract-related work. That could mean your support roles like payroll or HR, supporting the employees who perform the contract work. Those offices would need to display the posters. Other support functions, just to keep in mind, if they help support the purpose of the contract, like IT, administration, could even be inventory management or fulfillment, really any other area of your business if it helps to carry out the purpose of the contract. Okay, another question we got is, how do you handle postings for employees who work remotely? I did touch on this in the presentation, but I'm going to go ahead and offer some other options. I talked about what I consider the ideal solution, the most airtight when it comes to compliance, and that would be, assuming your employees have internet access and they regularly communicate with the office via, email or internet. I recommended an online solution, and preferably one that sends email notifications directly to the remote workers, one that provides, digital access to all the current posting images, one that notifies the employees whenever there are mandatory updates, and finally that has some kind of tracking of acknowledgement so you can, have proof or, record keeping to show when the employee viewed the posters. That's the ideal solution. There are other options. When it comes to employees who have internet access, if your company has an intranet site, like an HR intranet site, you could always put a link up on your site, a link to all the current posters, and again, making sure that it's being kept up to date and that it's complete. I would recommend taking a few extra steps to make sure it's properly communicated to your employees, since if you don't have the emails and the tracking, you would just want to work that into your handbook policies, for example, letting employees know that these posters are there and that they're required to go look at them on your intranet with really specific instructions. You can work it into your training if you do harassment training or safety training as a refresher. If you even wanted to put in some measures into place to notify them when there are updates, and maybe even have them acknowledge in your own way via email or by paper, when they have reviewed posters. So all of those safeguards would help. When it comes to employees who work remotely who don't have internet access, or they don't have mobile devices or computers where they can regularly and frequently access a digital solution, then you can consider either sending the actual posters or even the binder solution if they're in a remote location that doesn't have walls. Okay, I think that's all we have time for. Stephanie, let me know if you want to tackle a couple more questions or.
Nope, that's all we have time for today, Ashley. Thank you again on behalf of ComplyRight. We appreciate your insightful answers to the extra questions from our attendees from our webinar. And if you're looking for more information about posting compliance, you can visit www.postertracker.com to learn more about the appropriate posting solution for your business. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.